Well, welcome everyone to this edition of Stories for Healing. As you know, this is a really wonderful program that started a couple weeks ago now, and it really has taken off because of, I believe, its mission, and that is to try and heal all the divisions and stress and antagonisms between people that seem to be um, so prevalent throughout not just our country but around the world and in our communities, and it at times gets to be pretty heavy. And so as a storyteller, I asked myself, what do we do about this? Because simply telling you that I'm right and you're wrong is not going to help, or telling you this is how you solve the problem is not going to help. And storytellers, of course, we know how to tell stories, and we know how to tell stories in particular that invite people to see the world through different eyes, to see a different world. And what better way to start the healing process than to tell stories of healing and reconciliation, of all those really open-hearted things that the world so desperately needs right now. So it's my great pleasure to introduce our storyteller for this segment, Rebecca Lemaire, and she is going to tell us a story. And so, Rebecca, please tell us a story.
Thank you, Jim. I'm really glad to be here, and thank you to everyone who's there listening to us. So this story, I first heard Lynette Ford telling it, and I wrote to her and I asked her if she had other sources. So it's from her family. And then I did find another source, a book written by Pascal Teulade, a French author, but the book was only ever published in Mexico and for a very short time. So it's one of those stories that's hard to track down, but that has traveled around a little bit. And this is my version based on those two versions. Once upon a time, somewhere in the world, there was a little village. In that village lived an old woman. She was the oldest in the village. No one knew exactly how old she was, because for as long as people could remember, she had been celebrating her 80th birthday. That day, she was cleaning, dusting her living room. And when she cleaned, she always sang the same song that she had picked up along her travels, and she couldn't quite remember the melody. She remembered some of the words, her favorite words, and it went like this. Life that's given me so much, that's given me so much. Oh, thank you to life that's given me so much, that's given me so much. And she was dusting and singing when suddenly there was a knock on the door, and she thought, that's a bit early. She opened the door and immediately she recognized her visitor. Death. Please, please do come in. Shut the door behind you, it's cold. Oh my goodness, you're freezing. Please, please come in. And she led Death to the armchair by the fireplace. There, you'll warm up in no time. You'll feel better soon. And she went back to dusting and singing. Oh, thank you to life that's given me so much, that's given me so much. When Death had recovered from her surprise at the reaction of the old lady, she got up, she approached the old lady and she said, yes, I am Death, and it is time to go now. Come on. Yes, of course, said the old lady, but not quite yet. I have to finish cleaning, you see. And while you're there standing up, please, you can help me. And the old lady took a broom. She put it in Death's hands. And Death said, but I'm Death. I do not sweep. And the old lady said, you get the hang of it. It's very easy. Look, just like this. And she showed her. And Death started sweeping. And then the old lady said, and sing with me. You know, when you sing, time passes so much quicker. It just goes like this. Look. And Death said, but I am Death. I do not sing. The old lady said, it's easy, just 2 lines. Oh, thank you to life that's given me so much, that's given me so much. And so that afternoon, Death was seen sweeping and singing in the old lady's living room. Oh, thank you to life that's given me so much, that's given me so much. Oh, thank you to life that's given me so much, that's given me so much. And Death and the old lady cleaned the whole of the living room. They pushed all of the furniture against the walls under the directions of the old lady. And when they had finished, the old lady said, perfect, exactly the way I wanted it. And Death said, okay then, it's time to go now, come on. Yes, yes, of course, said the old lady, but not quite yet. I have to finish the dinner. Come and help me as you're here. But I am Death, I do not cook. But Death followed the old lady into the kitchen, and she helped to make the meal. She cut the vegetables, she minced the parsley, she stirred the stew, and when they had finished, they brought out all of the dishes and they put them there on the dining table in the living room. Perfect, said the old lady, exactly the way I wanted it. Okay then, so it's time to go now. Come on. Yes, yes, of course, but not quite yet. I have to get changed, you see. And while I'm changing, please, would you mind opening the door for the first guests when they arrive? Guests, said Death. Yes, said the old lady, it's my birthday. I thought you would have known something like that. Every year, the whole village comes and celebrates with me. And the lady disappeared into her bedroom. And Death went and stood by the front door and waited. And soon there was a knock. Death opened. Ah! The young man screamed. He hid behind his wife and he said, let's go, what's that? And his wife said, I guess one of your grandmother's guests. And look, it is smiling. Smiling, said the young man, how can you see that? But he followed his wife into the house. And more guests arrived little by little. The lady's friends, her neighbors, her children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. And everyone had a very different reaction to Death opening the door for them. Some people got really angry immediately, sometimes not even really understanding why. Others, they did what that young man had wanted to do. They ran away, they hid behind a tree and they waited to see what would happen to the next guests arriving. Some people didn't even see Death. The door opened on its own and they entered. And some others saw Death, but they pretended not to. Soon the living room was packed with people. The old lady had come out of her bedroom. She was shiny and resplendent in her yellow dress with her dancing shoes on, and she was giving explanations to her guests who were asking her, but who or what is that? And she said, it's Death, and she's going to spend the evening with us and celebrate with us. Some people looked at each other knowingly, thinking her tired mind is playing tricks on her. Others smiled, and others just moved away as far as they could from Death. But the party began. They ate, they drank, they chattered, and people got used to this presence of Death amongst them. Some people even talked to Death. The daughter of the old lady had a long conversation with Death in the kitchen while she was preparing the birthday cake. And at some point, Death was even seen there by the fireplace, surrounded by all of the children of the party, telling them something, a story maybe. And then the musicians got their instruments out, the violins, the drums, the flutes, the kalimbas. And of course, the first song that they sang was the old lady's favorite one. Oh, thank you to life that's given me so much, that's given me so much. And everybody sang the song because everybody knew those 2 lines in the village. They had heard the old woman sing it so often. And they could even have sworn that they heard somewhere in the background a deeper voice singing, oh, thank you to death, that's given me so much. Oh, thank you to life, that's given me so much, that's given me so much. And then the music got faster. It was time to dance. The old woman approached Death and said, let's dance. And Death said, but I am Death, I do not. But Death got up, took the old lady in her arms, and they started dancing. And it was such a sight. Everybody took a step back to watch the old lady whirling and skipping and dancing in Death's arms. And she danced and she danced and they danced and she danced until, too much, I'm out of breath. She said, I have to stop. And she grabbed her grandchild's hand, the young man who had wanted to run away at the beginning. And she said, you dance with Death while I rest, just a minute. And the young man said, no, but he danced with Death. And the old woman, she rested, and then she danced some more. And all of them, they danced and they laughed and they celebrated the old lady all night long. And quite a few people ended up dancing with Death. And when the sun appeared at the horizon, people started leaving. And the old woman stood at the door and she gave everyone a big hug, and she had a wise and kind word for each one of them. And soon there were only her very close friends and her close family. And they said, but we can't leave you. We'll stay. We can't leave you now with. And she said, it's fine. I'm fine. I prefer to be alone with my friend Death. You can go. And they left. When the old woman had closed the door behind her last guest, she turned and she looked at Death and she said, thank you so much for letting me celebrate my last 80th birthday on Earth. And she said, time to go now, said the old lady. Come on, let's go. And Death said, well, yes, of course, but not quite yet. You see, Death had enjoyed dancing and celebrating so much that she asked if she could come back the year after and celebrate the birthday once again and dance again. And so she did. She came back, and more people that year danced with Death, and more people that year talked to Death. And the year after that as well. And at the end of that third year, when the old woman closed the door behind her last guest and she had given everyone a big hug, she said, my body can take it no longer. It's time to go now. Come on. And Death took her hand. Together, they left, humming. Oh, thank you to life, that's given me so much, that's given me so much. And you know, they say that in that village, since then, no one has ever been scared of Death again, because everyone in that village, from the youngest to the oldest, had talked to Death, knew Death, and everyone in that village by the third year had danced with Death.
Oh, Rebecca, I'm so moved. Thank you so much for that wonderful story. Oh,
Thank you to Annette Ford as well for giving me permission to tell it.
oh my goodness. Um, I noticed that Death is a woman in the story. And can you say something about that?
It's a comment that I got. I first told this story in Spanish, and so my languages are English, French, and Spanish. And in French and Spanish, Death is a she.
Okay.
You know, we have a genre for each feminine, female and masculine, right. For feminine and masculine for each noun. And so it just didn't make any sense to say. I know that in England or in English, it's usually referred as he.
Yes.
But then I decided to keep it even English. And also I heard a story recently from Azerbaijan, and they were using death as feminine as well. And I thought, just keep it that way. Why not,
Oh,
to change
yes.
the our perceived ideas? And
Yes, yeah.
yeah,
Because I think for us English speakers, it opens up another possibility for us to look at death, and it actually speaks even more directly to the story in that subtle difference. So that was wonderful. And remind me of the areas of the world that these you heard two versions of this early on. Do you know
yeah.
which?
So Lynette Ford told me that it was from her family, so from the
Okay,
Appalachian Mountains. Then she's African American, so she
right,
says Afro-Latin
yeah,
tradition. So I thought that was really interesting. So it could be European as well. She wasn't
hmm,
quite sure. She had just heard it from her family. She had never seen a printed version. And then I researched and I finally found a printed version written by a Frenchman called Pascal Teulade. And I haven't managed to contact him yet. I've still
uh-huh.
been trying. But his book was only published in Mexico. And in Mexico, they have the Day of the Dead and they're
That's
quite
right. Yeah,
open to the concept of death. I don't know if that's why, or if he was living there, and it was
yeah,
printed only for a very short time. So I read it in Spanish,
yeah, yeah.
and then I heard in English. Yeah. And she uses he for death.
Yes, yes. Okay. Well, again, a wonderful, wonderful story. And how do you? We talk about how does one welcome the outsider? What greater challenge to face than for so many to welcome death? I love it.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, and I mean, thank you, thank you so much for joining us for yet another wonderful story. I want to remind you that these stories are posted twice a day, 2:30 in the afternoon and 8 o'clock in the evening on Eastern U.S. time on Facebook Live. We're live on Facebook. And then they make their way to YouTube. So please come and hear them told live or visit the YouTube page afterwards or the Facebook page afterwards and hear them again or hear the ones you've missed. But more importantly, remember that it's when we listen to each other and tell to each other with an open heart that really the healing can begin. And the healing is not just of the other person, but it's of ourselves as well. So again, thank you and have a wonderful day.